Hey, welcome to another episode of Strive 365, where we're helping guide you to a better life, whether it be mentally, physically, emotionally, or spiritually, personally, or professionally. I am your host, Justin Arnold, in the amazing RockVox studio here in the Rochester area. And today I'm thrilled to be joined today by Chip. Chip is what he calls himself, a flux enabler, which I'm sure we'll dive into today. He's dedicated to helping people achieve holistic health and wellness. He's got creative workout routines you can check out on his Instagram. And he has an emphasis in mental and emotional well-being, so similar to myself. He's committed to healthy eating habits and teaching those along the way, and he's just a true inspiration for anybody looking to improve their overall health and quality of life. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired by Chip's passion for health and wellness. So Chip, why don't you introduce yourself if somebody were really like, hey, Chip, who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, so the elevator speech. The famous elevator speech. I've been doing this stuff for 26-ish years, and I still can't quite figure out what that elevator speech is. But the goal is to introduce people to, or reintroduce people to themselves, get a better relationship between them and their own bodies, which we have an entire fitness industry that's actually bad at that. And so I'm hoping we can find ways to have people connect with themselves and find joy through movement, and then take their curious selves, look at the world and go, what can I do? What is possible now that I have this connection with my body? I can move it. I can groove it. I've done all this gym stuff, or maybe I'm just getting into some gym stuff, but ultimately, how do I take that and then go live? Instead of living for the gym, how do I use the gym to actually go live? And that's sort of my goal. Get people to just, be, I call it active tribal members. Instead of fitness as a selfish goal of aesthetics or whatever the industry tells us we're supposed to be following, we're supposed to be aiming for, we're supposed to have as a goal. Why aren't we looking at how we can be better, not just for ourselves, but for what I call our tribe, or the groups we're part of? And if personal empowerment is important, I don't think personal empowerment exists without also bringing the people around us with us.
Man, I love that.
That's my elevator speech.
No, that's good. You touched on a lot of things there, living for the gym, bad at things like movement. You talked about community, which is so huge. I mean, we could just have an entire podcast about the importance of connecting and community and serving, and how endorphins are lit off on that in our brains, and how we're built to serve. But like I said, you're doing this so well. And I was introduced to him by a mutual friend who's actually been on this podcast as well, and he just seemed to be a lot of similarities. Plus, like you said, what'd you say? 26 years you've been doing this?
Yeah.
So let's age yourself. How old are you?
52.
52. So yeah, he's got about a decade on me. But you look great, man. For those that are listening, he's a great looking dude. So tell me a little bit more about your background. Like, how did you get into what you just specifically spoke on, and how you became interested in health and fitness in the first place?
I got to give a shout out actually to punk rock.
Punk rock. Oh, yeah, man. No way. I love it. Okay, go.
That and other forms of alternative, aggressive music, early hip hop, stuff like that. There was a time in my teen years where music helped shape, but not to mention my upbringing. My parents were great at helping with this too, but music helped shape my love of free thought. And, along with literature and other things, I realized that at a young age that I was a big fan of free thought. Then I got into the fitness industry, then I started working out kind of at a later age. I was already in my 20s. I didn't do the jock thing in school or anything like that.
You didn't play any sports? You mean like the jock? When you say the jock thing, you didn't play any sports?
I didn't play any sports, official sports. I just played. I just looked around the world and went, hey, this stuff, I want to go play and climb mountains and be in the water. And I was just a skinny little kid. And so finally I thought, let's put some muscle on. And I spent some years putting muscle on, following all the regimens of the time. Back in the 90s, everything was about the bodybuilding magazines. You either did the aerobics classes or you did the bodybuilding. That was pretty much your choices. And somewhere in there, I started becoming a trainer. And in that process, I thought, this isn't right. There's something about this that's not complete. There's a lot of obedience involved. There's a lot of vanity involved. There's a lot of aesthetics involved. And none of that was really what I was searching for. If I was searching for movement and strength as a component of free thought, so I could live a fuller life, there had to be something different happening. And so I started searching out other aspects of movement and looking beyond the gym as to what was going on in the world of connecting with your body. And I realized there's not a ton. Everybody was categorizing movement. You did your weightlifting, or you did your cardio, or you did your yoga, or whatever. You had these movement was just stripped down to products. All these little categories that became products, and that turned me off hugely to the whole fitness industry. In fact, one of the early fitness, I'll use the word influencer. He was a boss of mine at the first gym I worked at, and I remember him distinctly telling me that it wasn't supposed to be fun. If it were, fun, everybody would be doing it. He said, it's not supposed to be fun. If there were a pill to make the results happen, we'd all be taking the pill. And I thought, well, that's not right. What kind of results are we trying to get from a pill? How are we going to get expression of ourself and free thought and love of the connection with our body from a pill? He was talking about the aesthetic connection. Everybody wants six-pack abs. Everybody wants the better biceps. Everybody wants a good butt. Okay, sure, get that from a pill, but where's the satisfaction in that? And so I realized the goals of the industry were not my goals. And so I started just exploring what else was possible. And that meant taking from all these categories that already existed, finding the common threads between all these categories and using them on my terms, not on the terms of the industry. And then I decided to open a gym from that place and teach workshops from that place and give the experience back to people of, hey, you can have control of your own journey without needing what I half jokingly call the fitness industrial complex leading the way.
Man, I can see why our mutual friend connected us. You were speaking my language, and for very similar reasons, the obedience, the aesthetics, the vanities. I love how you say free thought. I talk about, I know we briefly talked about this when we first met, especially with nutrition. When there's a title on something, when there's a title on food, when there's a title on on movement. Not to say that these are necessarily in wrong, and they all have good concepts, but when you start to develop a title, you start to develop, you become very tunnel vision that this is the way, in a way. Like
you develop a brand.
Yeah.
You become brand loyal.
Yeah. And if you come into my facility, whether it be a life coaching, whether I'm coaching somebody through life, through nutrition or movement, and it sounds very similar to yours, it's literally about, hey, this is why you're here. This is what you need. This is what you want. But you'll see me pulling from maybe bodybuilding, primal movements. Sure. We could be doing body weight, kettlebell. It's the idea is we're going to use whatever modality possible to get you to where you should be and need to be. And I love that you emphasize play. Like for the same thing, it needs to be fun. It needs to be enjoyable. Like I look at my kids and they exercise and move not because they need to or they have to or because it's the right thing to do or because they're trying to get six packs. I never hear my kids talk about that. But it's literally just because it's fun. Like they play sports, they climb a tree, they work out in my gym, but they do like more playful. And I believe that's the way to do it. And I love what you said there. And I totally agree. I do want to go back on the punk rock thing. You express it, but man, was there like I want to know the bands you listen to, because I used to listen to punk rock, and I don't get too many people under that mention punk rock. So I got to talk about that a little bit more.
I was lucky to be a curious teenager when the hardcore punk movement just got started in the early 80s.
Yeah.
So, of course you had all the classics. You had the Dead Kennedys and Black Flag and Subhumans. I mean, that the list of those bands goes on and on. But what I love, just an aside here, is that so many of those bands are still touring.
All right.
It's been 40 years. And I mean, I've seen a few of them on tour. I see some of them with their tours coming up that I want to go see, like MDC.
Man, I'd go
7
with
Seconds is still touring, all these bands. And I think that's amazing. This weird fringe element of society that the rest of society tried to push away and just get rid of. Not only is it still here, but it's thriving.
Yeah. I mean, mine was the 90s you're looking at like NoFX and Pennywise and some of those groups. And I remember my son and I had the opportunity to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland last year. And these bands are on there. And they talked about what we're talking about, not necessarily on the nutrition and the movement aspect and how they influenced you or something, but just the free thought,
Right.
and how, what they express. Man, let's go down this a little bit, because would you say that as society, especially as we become more computerized, digital, electronic, AI, all this, not to say that these are bad, but in itself, like anything over consuming and relying on and dependent on can be a drug and can be addictive. Like I said, these can be tools to be utilized, but would you say it's pulling away from that free thought that we speak of?
Well, we've got two key human traits that seem to always be stopping our progress, unfortunately. One is the need for identity, right? We need tribe. We need some sort of something to identify with. And the other is human investment. And we want to invest into an identity. And too often, when we do this, we invest. The more we invest, the less free thought is involved. In fact, we'll layer on all sorts of cognitive dissonance telling us that thing is what we need, when in reality, that thing might be very bad for us. I see this in the fitness industry. You see this in politics. You see this through religion. You see this in every aspect of life. So we want to be part of something and we want to invest in something. But if we don't have the filters of experience and wisdom and actually maybe just joy and intelligence, we get trapped. And I think social media has huge claws in trapping us from our freedom, unfortunately. And by freedom, I'm not talking rah patriotic freedom. I mean free thought, which is a completely different thing.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Like you said, need for identity, but there's so many people that don't even know what their identity is, and then filter, like, we're so fast paced, busy is a word I hear. I don't have time. And so people can't even pause, as you suggested, and just breathe and just filter it through whatever they need to filter, their morals, their goals, what they want their life to look like. They just go because so-and-so has it or is doing it, or the vacation they're on. Speaking of vacations, and along this subject line, that's what we do as a family. We sit down before anything, and it's not, hey, let's go there because they went there. Oh, that looks nice. Ooh, I want this. It's more like, what do we want to feel? What do we want to experience? And who do we want to feel and experience it with? And then we get to, that's our filter for that. Essential. I'm just trying to give an example for that for people that are listening and not maybe fully understanding. And we filter that, and through that, we can decide where we're going, what we're doing, because we've already filtered it through who we're going with, by ourselves or with the family, or what we want to experience. Waterfalls, mountains. Well, that's not going to happen on a beach, or whatever it be. Like, we want to do something hard, or we want to do something easy, something unique, something different, whatever whatever we're feeling in that moment, or whatever we want to feel and experience in June of this month, we can decide that. And instead of where we want to go, like, hey, like the common thing here, everyone goes to Cancun. We've never been because it doesn't have anything that we want to feel and experience, we base it off those filters. And I love that my wife and our kids, and we do that, and I encourage other people, but there's other ways to filter it. So correct.
Well, if we look at it through the lens of the fitness industry, it's so simple to, this is what I tell my clients, and this is what I teach at workshops, and I talk about this in my books. We should train through our value system. And we should work out through our value system. And what that means is we have to figure out what our value system is. And when we start finding our value system and comparing it to how we're actually moving and training, we might find that there's big discrepancies. They almost might be antithetical to each other. If I value, like a lot of us do, if we value, say, appreciation, respect, and love, but our training happens to be abusive, distracting, or doing something that's putting obstacles in our way to finding joy as opposed to bringing us joy, then we're not training with our value system. And I see so many people who have bought, they've invested in the product of fitness to some degree, where they've cut off their free thought. They bought the product, which is an abusive fitness system, something that's actually painful, suffering, that sort of thing. And yet they value things like appreciation and respect and love. So why are they training through abuse if they're actually, if that's counterintuitive, if that's antithetical to their value system? And so I'm hoping we can move and train to move through a productive system. You mentioned the word busy, not busy, productive, and understanding the difference between being busy and being productive, and have a training system that actually reflects our value system. It's still going to be challenging, but it doesn't have to be suffering. It doesn't have to be painful. Those are not things that are within my value system. And so I'm hoping other people can find that too. And therefore, like you were talking about, use that filter, look at the world through the filter and go, is this actually something that should be on my journey? Or is it something that I'm just paying money for and buying into and investing in because I've been told to, or because the person next door is doing it, or because those quick swipes on the media, the TikTok and the Instagram have told me it's important.
Yeah. I love the value system. And that's the other thing. People haven't developed one sometimes. They haven't. I also call it, like, for a family, since I'm always going to talk from that perspective, having 3 kids and a wife, a mission statement is something we did. Like, what are our values? What are our mission? Sure. What's our,
Yep.
And as a family, not that we're running our family like a business, but you, in a way, should, of course, with more love and compassion. Not that you shouldn't have that in a work environment. But what I'm saying is, developing a mission statement, developing your goals as a family, values. But even we talk a lot about, or we hear a lot about financial, running your home essentially with budgets, but people don't talk about it on the personal level, even on the movement level and all these things. So I love that, developing the value system. I'm totally on you. I'm totally on with that. And productive. Yeah. I don't use the word busy. I got away from it years ago. And I'll use the word productive, and then I'll give myself a self-analysis. Am I productive or am I busy? And if I'm busy, it probably means that I'm like randomly trying to be busy, because it goes back to the story you tell yourself. So if you continue to tell yourself you're always busy, then you're always going to fill your mind with busyness, and you're always going to be busy is what I imagine, meaning checking emails constantly, going on social media because you're busy. So you have to continually be busy to prove the story that you continually tell yourself. That sounds essentially what you're saying. So productive versus, or like, I love the word productive, or as I say it, like I said, my schedule's full, but I'll actually look. If it's not full, then I'm lying to myself. But So I just gotten away from the word busy, because I know when I use that, what it does to my mind. But if I say the word productive, I'll actually be productive. But I also find productivity in rest too. So that's another story that we have talked about on this podcast. You look like you were going to say something. For those that are listening, he looked like he was going to say something.
Oh, I'm always looking like I'm going to say something. Well, one of the things, productivity versus busyness, again, you were originally talking about social media. Social media is alive with busyness, but what the heck is actually getting done with it? And for the most part, not a lot. For the amount of time we spend on it, what are we getting out of it? And it's, like you were saying, keep the brain busy, right? It fills space in the head to make us feel. I think it comes from what I call hustle culture. We equate busyness with success instead of productivity with success, and that's a bummer. And in the fitness world, you can get so much more out of 15, 20 minutes than you can an hour and a half if you know how to, pinpoint it really well, and you know how to be productive in your training, in your workout.
Yeah, it's like me writing a book, and people are like, how do you ever do that? Because I'm productive and I can still play with my kids, and I schedule time, and it's about scheduling everything. And I'm big on calendars, even when scheduling time with my wife, scheduling time with my kids. And it might seem overwhelming or like I tell you this, if you think it's just going to happen because you live in the same house or because you love your kids and you love your wife, so you know things are just going to happen, it doesn't. And I know that early on in my marriage, so I fixed it. I fixed it by scheduling it. Especially during COVID, I had a lot of opportunity, but I wanted to continue. I loved how much time I spent with my family. So we just, we take time, if not every day, at least 4 times a week, we do like 30-minute, if not an hour outside of play. And then my wife started this cool thing of like we put a bunch of ideas in a jar on a Friday night and then we draw it, and that's what we do on a Saturday. So it's some cool little things that we're scheduled to pick a jar and then we're going to do something together, which is really neat. And I'm totally with you on that. And hopefully some people have found some value in that, because we need to be filling in. This all goes in health and wellness. This is all because it's all connected.
Like scheduled spontaneity.
Yeah. But you also need to know that like life happens. So if for some reason, like you have a full day, if you're a businessman, or I get it with some people, or something happens or a curveball comes your way that you have to take care of, just make sure you make up for it. So if you plan on playing with your kid on a Tuesday at 4:00 and it didn't happen, and you didn't have any plans on Friday, swap it around. I'm a true believer that those things happen in my life and you have to make up for it. And you need to do it because it's important, because you talked earlier on about tribe, community, relationships. So you need to find out what those most important relationships are and making sure you're scheduling that time. Because if you can say it in your head all you want, I love this person, they're the most important person in my life, but are you dedicating it to you? It's looking at your schedule and what are you dedicating the most time to, the most effort? What are you putting your heart and soul into more than things that you just said are the most important things in your life? I hear it all the time. Oh, I would die for this person, but would you live for this person?
Right.
So live for that person, live with that person and connect. And just remember, it doesn't mean every day, like I said, or hopefully every week, but you need to it can't always just be spontaneous, even though women do love that. That's cool too, but you need to schedule it and you need to make time for it, especially if you say those words that they are the most important in your life. So that's great, man. So you talk a lot about holistic health, the holistic approach to health and wellness. You briefly have talked about what it means, but what else would you like to share about what it means, and how do you incorporate that into your life or with people you're working for? When people hear holistic, it could be a list of different things, but I would love to hear your perspective on it.
In one of my books, I swapped the word holistic with authentic. Ooh. Because authentic brings it back to you. Holistic has basically become a brand again.
Yeah.
It's become another category.
Yeah. Watch authentic to become it too.
Yeah. And so I like the concept of authentic, because then it's coming from you. It's not coming from, what a media campaign is telling you it's supposed to be. And so the goal is to find the authentic self. And unfortunately, through the overwhelming fast pace of social media and that sort of thing, we are so easily distracted. Going back to being busy, we're so easily distracted by being busy, whether it's busy through thought, the idea that we're always having to create something or think something or do something. We forget who we are. And so movement, here's the cool thing about movement. Our body has one job. Its job is to move. All of the processes of the body are so it can move. It's got the wire system. It's got the gas and energy systems. It's got the central processing unit. It's got the pumps. It's got the exhaust. It's got all these systems just so it can move. And we have done so much in our lives, especially in Western culture, to eliminate the movement, to cut the movement out.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping we can let our bodies do what they're supposed to do. And so one of the things I always do with my clients is I always say, let it happen, don't make it happen. So many times people try to make an exercise happen or make a workout happen or make something happen, especially if they're involved in specific sports or specific workout programs. They're supposed to do certain things. And here's the thing about the body. It learns movement faster than the brain. So sometimes we have to take the brain out of it, let the body do that. In that process, sometimes the body's going to tell us it wants to do something beyond what we think it's supposed to do. The brain can organize the process, but the brain needs to step out of the way when it comes to figuring out what the process actually is. Like the brain is great for structuring it. We're going to have a training session. It's going to consist of these things, but often the brain has to get out of the way when the body tells it, look, I need this. I need to move like this. I need these things in my life to become better at the movement. And so when we have a relationship with the body, we have a dialogue with the body. We're not just trying to control it. So we're not trying to dominate it. So much of fitness seems to be control the body, dominate the body, push the body, force the body. If you were to talk about a relationship like that to a therapist, they'd call it abusive. Why are we striving for abusive relationships with our body?
Yeah, relationship with the body, and the mind-body connection is another way some people might say it. But you also, I love what you said there, that the body learns faster than the brain. And this is something I work heavily with my clients, especially those coming from pain, whether it be physical, mental, but it's all connected. And that's the majority of my clientele. But I see it with each new client, how connected or disconnected, connected to their pain that they can't let go and trust the body.
They identify with it.
Yeah,
they identify
I have a bad knee. My hips are bad. My shoulder is bad.
I am the bad knee. I am the bad hips.
Oh man, this speaks to the heart of what I do, brother. This is a passion of mine, and I'm so glad you touched on it because and this is what I do with people, and it's sometimes it's a quick, but over and over again, it's a long process because you got to develop that relationship with them for them to trust you, for them to eventually love and trust their body. We're in this thing called the human body. The only thing, the thing we're born with, the thing that is carried with us the rest of our life, but it's the one thing I believe and I imagine most people don't have much of a relationship with or a healthy relationship with, or are disconnected from it. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's how I've felt as I look at the world and watch around us because we're so busy or trying to be productive or whatever word we want to put there. And we need to spend time with ourselves. I can talk from personal experience, as I talked about in my first book, being from trauma and pain. And so disconnecting from my body, I didn't want to connect to myself. I wanted to have a busy mind so I didn't have to face the pain, the trauma, think about anything. And so, for example, something that was uncomfortable and was meditation, calming my mind down, quieting, so I could truly connect with myself. And there's still times where it is, but that has been a groundbreaking thing for me. And once I finally got that, it was amazing how I was able to be more creative, more productive, get better results in life, gym, professionally, and the list goes on, just because I got to know myself. And yeah, I love also what you said there about the way we talk. You know, I'm fat. My family's fat, the relationship we have with ourselves, just words that identify like the bad shoulder thing. And then that's abusive. You know, love yourself and just be great, like be excited about the journey and that you're on a journey. And just, but when we start to develop these identities, we stay in them, they get worse. And like, if you're a parent, this is huge because if that's your identity, what story are you teaching and training your kids? That's, we come from a fat family. We're big boned. Whatever. You're going to train them in that way. So if you're using abusive language with yourself, your kids will start to do it too, whether you think it or not, because I've seen it happen. I've worked with young kids who are having health issues, who use that destructive language, and I see where it comes from. So just be mindful of these things and just know as long as you still have breath, man, you are loved, but it starts with yourself. And another thing I'll say one more is that if you don't start loving yourself fully, you're loving that body, it's really hard to let people in or love others in yourself, that receive and give cycle. So man, that is some great stuff. And then that all ties into movement, because once you start doing that, you start moving better. And that's why you said enjoy it, because that's where the endorphins come. We need to start looking at movement as not the aesthetics, as the benefit, not only on ourselves, but others, how we can play more with the kids, but also the endorphin effect, like movement, relationships, service, the same things that go off in the brain when you eat your favorite food like chocolate or have sex is the same stuff that's going off when you're getting good movement in and hanging out with the people you love and playing with them. Right. So, yeah.
I mean, so much of our lives are led by hormonal pursuit. The rush of the hormones, the good hormones. We strive for them. We can get them, unfortunately, through something like shopping. We can get them, unfortunately, through things like sometimes through aggressive or possibly even violent means. But we can also get them through connection, like you're talking about, whether it's with food, whether it's with people, whether it's with yourself. And if we are nothing if not run by hormones, and if we can understand that the better relationship we have with our body means the better understanding we have of our own hormonal system, we can find joy through movement and through our curiosity of movement. We approach a little bit more of a term that I use in one of my books, an Aristotelian term. If there's any Aristotle scholars out there, they're going to hate me for this, but the term's hylomorphic. And hylomorphic literally translates to mind body, but not as two separate things. It's one thing where the mind, body, and spirit work in unison. If one suffers, the other suffers. If one celebrates, it helps support the other ones. And to understand how hylomorphism works, we can look at the negative version of it. If I use the term stressed out, we understand hylomorphism, because when you're stressed out, it's mind, body, spirit, right? And if we don't like mind, body, spirit, we can always go cognitive, physical, and emotional. Those are the same three things, whatever terminology you want to use. So how do we get that stressed out thing, but the positive version of that, where the mind, body, spirit are all involved in once? And that's where movement and understanding your body plays a huge role, because if we are taking the body, which has that one purpose of movement, and we're letting it do its thing, our brain can be the very curious explorational vessel. The brain and the body work together. Suddenly the hormones are rushing. We got all the emotions going. We have a hylomorphic self. And so if we can find joy through movement, it attacks, I shouldn't say attack, that's a horrible word. It affects all of us, parts of us at once.
Yeah.
And so if we're training, if our workout is to actually give a foundation of strength to then be able to go have a movement practice, it's not the movement practice itself, it's just the training to have a movement practice, then the movement practice can not only create joy in our lives, but also make us more useful to our tribe. And so what I'm hoping to get people to do is understand that their training, their workout, is not the sum total of their movement practice. It's to create a foundation of strength and understanding of the body to then go have a movement practice. And I don't see a lot of people with a movement practice, even if they work out 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. They don't have a movement practice. They're just gymming all the time. And I'm sick of people training to get better at training rather than training to get better to go out of the gym and go live a life.
So what are you saying? People need to train more for a purpose?
Purpose is one of the big things I talk about. I think all training, while we're training, I have three things to focus on at all time: be precise, be present, be purposeful. And purpose, I think, plays a role in everything we do. In fact, if you're to talk about training, what is training, break training down, or break a trainer down, you can do this with a trainer or their program. It's four things. It's going to be program design, technique, personality, and purpose, which is the who, the what, the how, and the why. And we're always so busy focused on the first three. We're always focused on the personality. CrossFit has a personality. Powerlifting has a personality. Individual trainers have personalities. We're focused on what to do and how to do it. Every instructional video and every book out there is about what to do and how to do it. And so rarely do we talk about why. And if we don't have the why, the other three don't make sense. If we don't have a why, the other three are superfluous. So my goal, first and foremost, whenever I work with a client, whenever I teach workshops, let's talk about why. And let's get on a journey of why we're doing this. And there's an interesting thing I notice is a lot of people don't know how to set goals from that place yet. So they set goals from what the media has told them they're supposed to set goals from. So they come to us saying, I got to lose 15 pounds, or I got to look a certain way. And so I just ignore any upfront goals from most people. In fact, I work with clients to develop goals. I'm going to accept that their goals aren't going to come from a place of experience yet, which is where goals come from. And if you don't have experience setting actual body relationship goals, you're not going to be able to do it. So one of the things I do with the client is we talk about purpose, and then we start working on setting goals from that place. And of course, as we mentioned, value system. It's all going to come from the value system.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you what you do, and you do similar to me, and it turns into. I've literally just nicknamed it like the seven whys, because it usually takes about 6 to 7 or even 8, sometimes more, sometimes less, but it seems to be around that number where I just keep asking the client. They come in, for example, like you just said, I want to lose weight. Okay, why? Because it's the right thing to do. Okay, why is it? You just keep going down that, and some of the, it's interesting how more times than not, when you really keep digging, I'll say, the emotion that they attach to it. And that's what you want to get, because when there's an emotional attachment, not that I'm trying to trick them, but when there's an emotional attachment, you're more inclined to be passionate about moving and enjoying it and having a bigger reason why. Like, I'll give you an example that's very common, is it seems to be always for a loved one or because of a loved one. For example, my grandfather died at a young age, or my mother died at a young age, or I want to be able to be here's one. I'll give you an exact example. This guy's like, I want to be able to be old enough for my kids to graduate high school. I was like, what about being able to be healthy enough and move well enough to be playing with your grandchildren? And he started crying because he couldn't even imagine it. So I just popped that imagination for him. And you said, be curious. Like, I'm a big believer. Imagine anything. I mean, with the way everything is, why can't you live to be 100 or 150 or whatever? If you really practice a healthy life, you don't know when your last day is. And so I'm always about trying to maximize that. And I'm trying to really broaden the imagination of people of what's possible. But we set limits based off our environment and our experiences. But we need to be open to, because that's what I imagine. I imagine myself playing on the ground, crawling around, laughing, jumping up and down at whatever age I am. I don't know what age I am. I just know that my kids are going to have grandkids, and I don't want to just sit on the couch like my grandparents or my parents do and complain about my bad knee. I want to be there jumping up and down, crawling on the ground, playing with them, and loving my best life until my last breath. And I want to help people do that. And it sounds like, if you correct me if I'm wrong, that you want to do similar things as well.
Absolutely. I like to think of it as I want to live longer, not just die longer.
Die longer.
And it really,
wow.
Just really seems like we're getting good at dying longer. It's just taking longer for us to die. What was the meme I saw the other day? Something about I want to die young, but take a long time to do it. And I thought that was a great quote.
Sorry, go ahead.
And so, and you mentioned play with kids and getting on the ground. Let's not be afraid to go down and go up and go over there. And, I like to look at the world through my, 8-year-old eyes.
Right.
And can I get up on that? Can I lift that? Can I go under that? What can I do over there? And I think that's the relationship with my body. That's our bodies ultimately want to be always doing that. I think our bodies want to move, and we've been so busy stopping them from doing it. We've been training them not to. Whereas if we let them go, their bodies want to do stuff. It's never a lazy body. There's no such thing as a lazy body. Laziness is completely brain-based. Bodies might not be able to do stuff because you haven't let them, and they've detrained and they're incapable of it, but they still want to. And so hopefully we can get the brain out of the way, or let the brain again organize something so the body can go be curious, go explore.
I love what you said there. There's no such thing as a lazy body. And that's where it all starts, right? In the mind and in it. So if you're listening to this and it resonates with any of you, just remember, don't just go to the gym because it's the right thing to do, because you won't stick around long. You may not see the results because it's connected to our mind. If we feel this isn't doing anything, or if we attach an identity like we're fat and we got a bad knee, but we're going to the gym anyways, it's going to be a long, long time before you see results. But you start to love the body you're in, and you start to go there with a purpose. And if you need help, reach out to me or him, or there's plenty of others like us, maybe not enough that are going to help you find that. There needs to be a big why. I mean, on a surface level for me, I can relate to this even at 42. Because I was active in sports, and after sports through college or after college, it was finding a reason. And so it was literally just because I enjoyed the gym. But then I kept going, but I got burnt. And then I just started to explore and play. And that became fun, just going to have fun and playful. And now I play hockey because it started, as you guys have listened to this podcast, because I got 2 hockey players. And so now I've got a purpose to just continue to have an optimal body for that sport. And so it's really cool to have a purpose, whatever it is. I mean, my big purpose is always being able to play with my kids. So I always incorporate play. But if you struggle searching on your own, come to somebody like us, because one, it's going to be a lot better. It's going to be a lot more fun. You're going to love life, and it is possible, just to believe that, man. So speaking of that, you got a ton on your Instagram page of a lot of creative and challenging stuff. You sent me stuff on Messenger, which was cool. Thanks for doing that. What are some of your favorites? I mean, maybe you don't have any, but just listen to you. But I'm curious, do you have any favorite exercises or routines that you personally like to do?
I like to think of as a trainer, one of my big goals is I don't teach exercise first. I teach movement first. And it's important to understand the difference between movement and exercise.
Yes.
In fact, I'm hoping we can start interchanging those words a little bit more, because I keep seeing study after study or article, magazine article after magazine article or meme or whatever that just says exercise is supposed to be all this good for you. You know, it's supposed to do you good. It's supposed to elongate your life. It's supposed to make you happy. Exercise. It's not exercise that does that. It's movement that does that. Now, we can turn movement into purposeful movement by making it exercise, and that's fine. But too many of us have a bad stigma with the word exercise, because exercise represents suffering to so many people. So if we're told that suffering is good for us by being told that exercise is good for us, that's going to turn a lot of people away. So I like to say, no, movement is good for us. We can turn it into exercise if we want. But and all exercise is simply movement, but not all movement is exercise. And that's very important to understand the difference. So if you were to ask me, if I had a favorite exercise, I can't say I have a favorite. I have a foundation of movements that I want people to be good at. I always train for skills. Big thing I always say is we're always working towards skills. To get better at skills, we sometimes have to train movements. Movements are very important to get better at skills. And then sometimes we have to train specific muscles, the old bodybuilding style training, to get better at movements, to get better at skills. So I look at skills first. What are the skills I enjoy? I love climbing on stuff. I love picking stuff up. I love rolling on the ground. I love jumping and crawling. So what are the exercises? What are the movements that we can turn into exercises that'll support those skills? And it always comes down to some real fundamental stuff. Pick stuff up off the ground, put stuff over your head, carry stuff, roll on the ground, crawl on the ground, and be able to get up on stuff. When I get to those basics, I can create an entire training program just from those basics. I think people should climb on stuff more. I think people should sprint more. And I think people should jump and fall more, which would involve hopefully rolling and tumbling and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Your 8-year-old brain comes alive and the whole world opens up and you go, oh my God, it's a big playground out there. Just from doing those things, I can go play.
The fall thing, I mean, I teach all those as well. The fall thing is a big one that I emphasize because, a lot of injuries, there's a lot of fear, especially as you get older. We're kids, man, they're falling, they're pushing, they're playing around, they're loving it. But some people just aren't there yet. While I'll teach basic power movements or getting up and down, or start with crawling so they can get used to. I mean, most people don't even, from my experience, most people aren't used to even just crawling, going
using
on the
all
ground.
4 limbs as an adult, what is fancily called quadrupedal movement. Yeah, you can even take high-level athletes, and they sometimes don't know how to use all 4 limbs together on the ground. And I think part of that is because we're taught early on that crawling is childish and we're not supposed to do it. Once we're able to walk, we're not supposed to get back down to the ground, and that's a bummer.
The amount of things I could put in a jar that is told childish and will not do as adult, I would say there is so much that we should be doing. and the children do it better, and we could have a better life and more joy in our life if we practice more childlike behaviors, like laughing and play and crawling, and just, one that I talk about in the second book is just unconditional love that younger children that I see, like, kids are so resilient. I could lose my temper and they'll come back and hug me, 5 minutes later. Like, as adults, we stay bitter, we stay angry, we stay resentful, like we hold grudges, we start judging. You don't really see that in younger kids. And these are some of the things as adults that, that grip us and hold us tight and hold us back and hold us down, that if we could just be more like children, it goes back to what you're talking about. And that plays into the mental health that you've touched on as well.
I think the thing about children that's so important, that what you're saying, younger children have a hard time judging. They don't judge others and they don't judge themselves, and they don't judge movement. And adults judge movement. We have huge judgments about movement and how it's going to affect us. And children don't judge movement. They just go for it. And I think that's and one of the things I see that I think is very backwards is too many people trying to train children like adults, when we should be looking at the children as to how we should train. And, I see, programs like, I'm going to call them out, CrossFit Kids and things like that. You don't need to put a barbell in an 8-year-old's hand and have them start doing clean and presses yet, stuff like that. Yeah. There's a point where it can be useful. And I know children are curious and they want to see what it's like. Awesome. But when you start creating a program out of it, you're going to start adulticizing it, and you're going to ruin the whole concept, when you should be looking at that 8-year-old and saying, well, what are you doing and how can I do that?
Yeah, the thought process, you brought that up. I'm glad you did, because the thought process is that, hey, this is good. Let's get kids moving again. We live in an obese society. CrossFit, the fittest people on the planet. But there is some, I don't know if you've seen or heard, they're starting to do some early research on kids. Now, not the old theory that it'll stunt their growth, but yeah, they're strong, they're jacked, they've got 6-packs, and they might seem pretty mobile. But if they're playing sports, there is some early research that I've been looking at where too much of how do you say it? Too much of the structure, like lifting, because I don't want to call it's not only bodybuilding, like I said, it's CrossFit too. They're starting to show that that when there's too much structure, like let's do 3 sets of 10 of each leg of barbell lunges, and you know what I mean, that kind of structure, and they're in this, one or two planes of one or two planes of motion, that kids are growing up, because it's still very on and it's still very early evidence that they're actually getting more injuries in these sports. They're tearing, they're pulling, they're straining. Now, I'm not saying that's a guarantee, but it's just something to think about. I'm not saying don't do it either. What I'm saying is this is why we need to let kids be kids and encourage them to play and do movement, but not be stuck that this is the way, like we talked about earlier, correct?
I know too many children. Well, I should say I know too many adults that got completely turned off to movement because of the organization of sports and training. We, like in our teenage years, we're given 2 choices. You either play an organized sport or you stop playing. Because I can remember the time I was 12 years old when I thought to myself, I'm too old to go and ask my friends to come out and play. And the only option then was, well, then you go into organized sports. Well, I didn't. And so I never got into that culture, which in some ways helped me later in life, because I see a lot of adults who got burnt out on that. When you're told that all your play is supposed to be not only structured and organized, but sometimes overwhelming, win at all costs, then by the time you're 20, 25, 30, you're burnt out on movement. Yeah. You have a belief system in your head that movement is suffering and struggle, and you're going to avoid it. You don't know how to actually play like you did when you were 8 anymore. And so it's like we have to reteach a lot of adults how to be childlike again, because our structured sports program is doing what you're talking about. It's organizing movement too much. into very limited categories.
Man, I feel like the title of this podcast should have children, because you talk about curiosity, play, childlike, both from the mental to the physical to the emotional. And it shows like there are things that we do as adults that we should do. I'm not saying that there isn't. I would say as an adult, I'm more organized. I'm more schedule based. I am more productive. But you can include the things that we've talked about into these things as an adult, and you'll see them excel, especially the creative. I believe as adults, we start to lose our creativity, our curiosity out of whatever. I imagine the majority of it is fear or not knowing how. But there is massive benefit in all aspects of life. And again, that goes back to the movement like we talked about. If you haven't been listening, we're not telling you to move because you should. We're telling you to move because you get to. And the amount of benefits for not just you, but everybody around you for that. And it's fun. Who doesn't want to have fun? I think that's the point. I literally have, you can't see it here. Well, maybe you can. I literally have it on the back of my, fun is the point. Like fun is the point on the back of my laptop. And it really is. And yeah, there's stress, but when we have something to go back to is fun. Like get excited about going to do movement after a stressful day. Don't be like, man, I have to work out because I ate that cake and I'm overweight and but I'm tired. I don't want to. But instead, man, I get to work out. Let's go play today. Let's just do that. Maybe it doesn't have to be the weight room. Maybe it's racquetball for the day. For example, yesterday I did some lifting mixed with some body weight and kettlebell stuff. But today I was like, you know what? I had a cancellation this morning. I wanted to go play. So I went and played ice hockey. And that's my movement for the day. And I'm just trying to give people an idea. It doesn't mean you got to do what I do, but when you know your why, you'll start to filter it through, like you talked about, correct, and be able to figure out what your movement practice could look like potentially. So,
because it can look like a lot broader ideas than we're given.
Yeah.
You can go climb a tree at the age of 50 and it's totally cool. In fact, you might enjoy the hell out of it.
So my kids love climbing trees and I let them. Phrase I use, and you probably have heard this because I borrowed it, is I let them do dangerous things carefully. I teach them so they don't get hurt. And I love my wife, but I'm not throwing her on a bus. Her first reaction when she first saw them climb a tree was, oh my God, they're going to fall. I was like, no, let them do it. They're not afraid of getting hurt. And they've fallen and they didn't get hurt was the point of the story. I've seen my kids do a lot of things and I don't put that fear in them. I let them do it under supervision, of course. I'm not letting them run with knives and lighters or something, people. So be careful. I'm not saying that. But the point is,
a meth lab.
Yeah. Well, not yet. No, I'm kidding. That's a joke. Please don't report me. But yeah, so the point is like I let them do these things under supervision. For example, I'll give one more example because I know you want to chime in here. Is my son, I caught him going, we go a lot of camping and hunting and doing things. And I have knives and different things in my truck and things, axes, that kind of stuff, like mini ones, and he got one and I saw him playing with it and I was like, whoa. Let me teach you how to use it. So we carved out a day, which was awesome bonding time with my son. And he felt like a man. And I showed him how to use these different tools, went into the woods, and it was a blast. And now I feel comfortable. And you asked me before you use them. This is a great opportunity here for him. Instead of screaming, yelling, you don't use that, you could hurt yourself. Didn't send that message. This is a tool and here's how we use it. But you still need to ask my permission. And that's what I'm getting across, because it's like what I was originally saying was my kids haven't gotten hurt when they fall and do these things because I haven't instilled it, but I'm also teaching them how to do it properly or how to fall or things like that. And their body's prepared for it.
And imagine that if we got that sort of education where, dangerous, but safe, through movement, where
I'm sorry, I slapped at the meth lab. Sorry, go ahead. Say that again. Sorry, go ahead.
Just imagine by the time you're 35, 40, 45 and all those fears that you have of, I shouldn't do this because I'm going to hurt myself. Imagine if we've had the education the entire time. Well, you can do it. You've learned how to do it. You can now approach movement from a place of possibility. I like to say that the better choices we make now mean the more choices we have later. And the opposite of that is true too. If we're making crappy choices now by not learning things, by distracting ourselves, by being busy and not productive, we're going to have fewer choices later. So let's make good choices now and have more choices later. And that can start at any time. If you are 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and you're scared of movement, start making choices now so you're not scared of movement.
Yeah, and just know you can ask for help. Even men out there specifically, it's okay to ask for help. In fact, you're better for it. I mean, I know a ton of entrepreneurs that have business coaches, but they don't have like personal trainers or movement coaches because they think they can do it on their own. But they're not either not doing it well, or getting injured while doing it because they weren't taught how to properly do it, or whatever the reason might be. And it's just anything else. If you got a business coach and you're not moving enough or moving well or feeling good or staying healthy, then get a higher movement coach. And it goes in all this. And again, this isn't just about the physical, this is about the mental, which I definitely want to get into, because we've talked a lot about movement. We've talked a little about mental, but I'd love for you to share, some of the techniques you use to maintain a healthy mindset. And if you have any stories to share as far as if you've ever struggled with mental health, because this is about striving mentally and physically in here. So if there's any personal shares that you like on your journey and how you've learned to manage it, how you maintain it, and things of that sort.
So the big couple points. One is we really should embrace being a beginner. I like to say that I'm an expert at being a beginner, and if we let that mindset sort of lead us into life, our curiosity is going to be greater, much more satiated, but we're also going to have a little more fun because we're allowing ourselves to make mistakes. We're allowing ourselves to fail. One of the reasons people don't go to the gym is because they think they're supposed to know it all. Guys in particular, you're talking about men feel like they need to know a handful of things in life. They're supposed to know everything about the gym, everything about cars, and everything about tools, just as an example. I know one of those. The other two I'm very bad at.
I remember getting criticized because I didn't know a bumper of some 1957 something or other from another guy who did, And I'm like, I didn't know I was supposed to know that. I'm not a man because I didn't know the bumper of a 1957, whatever the vehicle was. This was years ago. Yeah. I'm like, I looked at him like, was I supposed to? Is that part of my man card? I missed that. Right, I missed that course. But anyways, go ahead.
So if we can allow ourselves, look, maybe manhood and womanhood and any type of hood, whatever label we want to put on ourselves, maybe that should incorporate being a beginner at anything. And that way, there's benefits to that. First of all, you're always going to be curious. You're always going to be excited to try stuff. You're always going to get that hormonal rush of learning new things. And second of all, you never have to worry about peaking. I think our whole society is based on peaking. You're supposed to peak. You're supposed to, we're told as athletes that we're supposed to peak in our 20s. That was 32 years ago for me. So, if I peaked then, it's been
so you're
downhill,
just downhill, man. No, I feel like I'm still peaking. I feel great at 42. I mean, if I was this in my teens, I'd probably be a pro athlete or something is how fit and healthy I feel. Yeah.
I could kick my 22-year-old ass right now.
Oh, 100%.
You're still fairly new to hockey. You've got a beginner thing happening there.
I love it.
And I'm the same way. I'm always looking for things to be a beginner at, because that way, not only will I never peak, but I'm always going to explore my curiosity. It's kind of fun. And the other thing is to really understand that all change to ourselves, call it transformation or whatever, comes from challenge. But challenge doesn't have to be suffering. And that's a big one, because our society, from religion to politics to everything in our Western culture, we are convinced that the greater the suffering, the greater the reward. And I want to tell people, no, the reward is just from challenge. It doesn't have to be suffering. Learning something new is a challenge, and yet it's wonderful. It's fantastic. It doesn't have to be suffering. Training is the same way. You can get better at moving with your body and experiencing movement through challenge, but not through suffering. My value system does not advocate suffering. So why would I approach suffering as something I would covet in my life to learn something? So if we can accept, to have change in your life, there's going to be challenge. but to also accept that it doesn't have to be suffering, then we can make our path a little more hopefully joyous and productive.
Yeah. So on that, like, is there any personal stories where you've had challenges where it's challenged maybe your mind or your health, and what are some of the ways that you've tried to maintain or overcome?
I'm not in any way what would be labeled a gifted or natural athlete. Everything I've gotten in terms of athletic accomplishment has been through challenge. I remember working with trainers who they could look at a barbell snatch and be able to do it. They could just see it and be able to do it. They could put a ton of weight on their back and do squats without rarely ever training squats, stuff like that. They were just natural movers. And what I learned from them is they make the worst teachers, because when it comes so easy to you, you're really great at mimicking the movement. Doesn't mean you're embodying the movement. So the people that go through the challenge of having to actually understand a movement turn out to be the better teachers, because they have to work hard at breaking it down, figuring it out for themselves, and then they can teach it better. And so a lot of gifted athletes aren't necessarily great teachers. My struggle has been that. How do I break movement down to understand it? How do I break strength and while at the same time, how do I get better at this workout stuff? How do I get better at this movement stuff? While at the same time, keeping my ego out of it, because I did grow up in the 80s. I was a kid through the 70s and 80s, very macho time. You had all the Schwarzeneggers and Stallones and Van Dams and all these muscular guys who were always, fighting for whatever. And it was the period of more is better, more is better. And the more in that case was muscle, size, appearance. And so I was 127 pounds in high school, and I'm seeing all this stuff going, I don't know if that's right. That doesn't feel right. But you struggle with the ego. So you still want the workout to bring you some sort of vanity, to bring you some sort of aesthetic being. Over time, there was an understanding, though. When you are moving and training within your value system towards your authentic self, good news, you're automatically going to look better. But it's a byproduct, not a goal. And when it's a byproduct and not a goal, you actually appreciate it a fair amount more. And that's a big thing, especially for men in this day and age who are told you're supposed to, muscle, big, size, bigger, stronger, faster, all that stuff. I find that a great deal of people I know who are larger than me and look more athletic than me, they can't do much. They're not that capable.
Yeah, I love the byproduct part. Like, back to the get to, like, I'm going to move today because it's fun, but I just happen to be losing weight along the process. Is just one small example. We've talked about a lot here. We're going to be wrapping it up here, but just let the listeners, the viewers know anything you're working on currently that you love to share. And then I got maybe two more questions, real quick ones.
The big thing the big things that are happening in my life right now is I've spent the last several years really working on my YouTube channel. So if you want to see what I do, go to my YouTube channel. It's Body Tribe. Body Tribe is the business I've been running for the last 20 years. 20 years this month, actually. But yeah, my YouTube channel is sort of one of my pride and joys. I put a lot of energy into it. There's a lot of great content in there. And the other thing is I am just now again starting my workshop series. Pre-pandemic, I had a bunch of workshops around the country that I did. And then the pandemic hit and I kept traveling, but it was tough to teach workshops at that point. Now I'm still traveling. I'm traveling around the country, and we've got a series of workshops called Flux Lab. And Flux Lab usually are me and one or two or three other presenters, 2-day workshops, really big deals. We've got one in Austin, April 15th, 16th, and one in Philadelphia, April 29th and 30th. Ryan Hurst from GMB is doing the Texas one.
Oh, cool.
Jason C. Brown, who's a kettlebell master and movement specialist, play specialist. I'm going to call him a play specialist. Jason C. Brown will be doing the Philadelphia one with me.
That's
and
cool.
then I'm creating one out in California. So yeah, go to the Body Tribe website, check those out.
Yeah, I'd love to have you out here, which we briefly have talked about, man. That would be awesome here in Western New York. You would definitely be a value set, I believe. So we always ask this to the end, and we've talked about a lot, and I could just leave it at that. But is there anything else that you would love to leave before we depart that to help people strive, whether it be mentally, physically, emotionally, or the other terms you used earlier that you wanted to make sure that you said today?
I have a slogan that is on a lot of my hoodies and a lot of my shirts and that sort of thing. And it's simply this, and I end my YouTube videos with this: you matter, treat yourself accordingly. You matter. And I think with that just sort of sums it up for me. Just means, look, you're important. If you find yourself important, treat yourself like you're important.
And he's speaking of your body, your mind, and everything within inside. So you. I asked this on the last one, and after hearing you talk, I'm going to ask last podcast, and I want to ask you this: if you had one unicorn-sized dream that you haven't accomplished yet, what would that be?
There's a lot, but I believe it or not, this one's very, very me based. I'm a tribal creature. I love doing things to help my tribe and empower my tribe. But this one, I would love to learn how to, what are those things? The squirrel suits, flying in a squirrel suit.
No, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I would love to take the time to learn how to do one of those properly, and throw in all the other stuff, throw in, feed and house the homeless, and throw in, let's end, world conflict. But I want to also fly the world in a freaking squirrel suit.
Yes. And maybe have people in your community along with you. Man, I appreciate it. This was a real pleasure. Chip, this was super valuable. Make sure those who are listening that you like, share, and comment to at least one or two people, if not 10, because there was a ton of nuggets on here that could provide help. Your simple job of just doing those things can help many people, and it's such a simple ask. It's not for us. It's for you and the other people in your tribe and in your community. So thanks for tuning in to another episode of Strive 365. Take care.